on to our topic for the day. Why should we take the time, the energy, the effort, the funds needed to get our CFRE, and why should we keep it up? That's the topic of today's session. As we jump into this content today, by a show of hands, I'd love to see who on this call already has their CFRE. I can't see all the faces. Nope. Okay, some of them don't have their screens. Okay, just Jake and me? Who is in the process of getting their CFRE? Who has already started? Yay, Jenna. Katie, woohoo. Anyone else? Any other hands I'm missing here?
We'll talk you
Oops.
into the next 15 minutes. Don't worry.
Perfect. Yes, wonderful. Well, thank you for taking that first step. But again, showing up today is actually that great next first step. So with that, let's go ahead and move on into the first slide. So first of all, I know we talk about the CFRE in our world, but does everyone know it means Certified Fundraising Executive? Just to make sure that we actually know the acronyms, because so often we use acronyms and we don't actually know the details of them, right? So that means that we are a Certified Fundraising Executive, and it is the most widely recognized certification in our industry. So main reason why we picked it to talk about today, because there are clearly other designations and certifications that you can get within the philanthropy space. But I think to look for something to get the best bang for your buck, this would be a great one. So today we're going to talk about why, right? Again, we want to sell you on the why, because otherwise there's really no point, right? It's a lot of time and effort, and not as much as you may think, that hopefully you'll walk away saying, hey, I can do that. But we got to be intentional about it. And so we'll start with the why. I'm going to walk through sort of the main whys that, they tout on their website, actually. And then we'll hand it over to Jake to start talking about the how. Okay. So with that, moving on into that first slide, we've got a top 10 reasons why you should get your CFRE. Number one, the very first thing it's going to do for you is elevate your credibility. We know that when you get some sort of certification or designation, there are things you have to do, hoops you have to jump through to get it, right? So at the very least, if your person you're talking to knows absolutely nothing about it, you have some letters after your name, it means you did something, you took a test, you put some time into something, and it automatically elevates your credibility. We'll tell you a little bit more about those details, which are significant and very much are important. But we know that it's going to elevate your credibility. And for those who know what it is, it's absolutely going to elevate it. Number two, it's going to help advance your career, y'all. The interesting thing that I found is the people who have their CFREs, there was a survey, 94% of them say that it enhanced their credibility with their employer and clients. So they felt that it enhanced their credibility, and that meant that it was going to advance their career in some way, shape, or form, right? We know that at minimum, you have to have been practicing, and not to steal Jake's thunder on the details of how you actually get it, but you have to have been practicing in the development and philanthropy space for at least 3 years to have established yourself in the credits that you need to get there, even to have the privilege of taking the test, right? So we know that by working that period of time, getting the experience and knowledge, and then getting this designation, that it can advance your career, absolutely. Next, it can help prepare you for greater job responsibilities, right? With experience comes growth, with that education, knowledge, practice, all putting that into place and demonstrating that you have actually had results in this field. All of those things culminating with an exam and getting your CFRE. We know that if you take the time and you count the things that you've done and you have actually done them, it's going to prepare you for greater job responsibility, right? So the fact that you are taking the time, reflecting on what you've learned, what you've accomplished, and taking the time to get your CFRE, we know that you're going to be better prepared, right? It's going to boost your skills and knowledge. at the end of the day, if you're studying for an exam, if you're looking back on all the things that you've done and reflecting on them, you're going to realize that you have more skills and knowledge than you did before it, right? So you're going to, and if nothing else, it's going to help you build confidence in the fact that you do have the knowledge and skills. I think when I went through this process, one of the things I realized is that, wow, I do know these things and I'm a lot more confident after it, right? So I think you've got those skills and knowledge by checking the boxes you need to check to get there, to get to that space. But it's absolutely going to make sure that you're able to demonstrate that to those moving forward. Number 5, you're going to be able to secure higher pay, 21.7% more in 2022 with the same amount of experience. So again, research has been done on this. Those people who had their CFRE were earning more than 20% more than those people with the same level of just experience. Kind of worth it. A good investment in your future, right? All right, next slide, please. Thank you. It's going to signify that you're a dedicated professional, right? Why on earth would you go through all of the time and effort to get your CFRE if you weren't thinking you wanted to stay in this line of work, right? We do oftentimes run into people who don't stay at jobs a lot in this profession. It can be challenging, right? So if you're looking to hire people in your shops and they have experience, they have their CFRE, you know that they're serious about this work. So for you, it's going to show that. It's going to show you're dedicated to your profession. You're a lifelong learner. You're someone who wants to grow and develop with the team. All very, very much attractive skills for you, not only in your current employment, but as you move forward and continue to grow in your careers. Number 7, it enhances the profession's image. Having a designation like this is absolutely important to our profession. It's something that, many people who don't understand the work that we do might not actually think that there's a designation to do it. They're like, you're just going out there and talking to people and getting them to give money. Like, how hard can that be, right? We know different. But there's actual technical things that you need to know in this CFRE exam, and there are very many skills, and it definitely raises our profession's image by having the CFRE. So the more of us that have it, the better it is for all of us in this line of work. It's going to benefit your employer, y'all. If you're that committed, you're dedicated, you are going to be a committed and dedicated employee, right? It's all of these things working towards the same common goal of being better, faster, stronger for the work that we do, not only for the communities and our clients and our donors, but for our organizations that we work for. Number 9, I think this one's a big one. Like I said, when I sort of came to that realization that I knew a whole lot more than I realized I knew, it lifts your self-esteem, right? Having that achievement that you have secured a designation, it lifts your self-esteem. It helps you realize that you know more than the average person in your profession. The same study that said 94% say that it enhanced their credibility, that they felt that 98% of CFREs felt that that personal achievement was valuable to their career. To me, that's about the confidence. That's about the self-esteem, right? Did anything change? Not necessarily, but I have accomplished something. I've achieved it. I have made it official, and I have used those skills to advance myself. I'm going to be a lot more, I'm going to be better at my job if I'm confident in the work that I'm doing, right? So, and the very last reason why you should get your CFRE, it helps expand your network, y'all. There's incredible networks on LinkedIn, CFRE on their own site, where you can information share, right? Obviously, we have these forums for you all, but as you continue to move forward and you continue to build your networks in this space, the CFRE network is extremely valuable. So if you're not already a CFRE, or if you're considering it, I hope you consider it today, because Jake is going to tell you all about how and what it takes to actually get your CFRE.
All right, thanks so much. So there's 3 categories that kind of proceed, and we'll talk you through the sequence. They put this on the CFRE website, but it's not super clear and you have to click through like 5 web pages to figure out what they're talking about. So we've just distilled this down so it's much easier and much more clear for you. Also, we can confirm this because all of us on the Pride team are either working on our CFRE or maintaining it through the same process. So we've thankfully been through this. We can confirm this is how you do it, but just want to talk through the 3 kind of requirements that preface being able to actually take the exam and get their certificate and get the letters and all of that. So the first category is what they call professional practice. And then this is quite literally like you are practicing like you would law or practicing an instrument, but you are participating in the industry. So they say 36 points in 5 years, which is kind of a weird specific amount. But as you can see here, the 1 month equals 1 point. They want you to have worked at least half of your job. Fundraising must be at least 50% of your job. So you could be fundraising and marketing or fundraising in PR or fundraising and outreach or fundraising and something else at a minimum of 3 years within 5 years. It does not have to be consecutive, but you don't have that much wiggle room because 3 of your 5 years and half of your job during that time has to be employment, not volunteer. You have to get paid to do this. Now, if you have a half-time job, still counts. They actually qualify this on their forms and saying, hey, if 100% of your half-time job, that still equals 50%. As long as you do that for a minimum of 36 months, then you can do that. People who are consultants, like many of us, have to submit both their client and project list as well. So this is a pretty tedious process. So if you work for American Cancer Society, it's pretty easy. You just submit your job information from the past 3 years. If you work for a consulting firm or you're a private consultant, it is a lot of paperwork to collect and make sure that you have there, but it all is worth it. This is one of the ones that you can't fast track. So we say, oh, I can hurry and get education. I can hurry and do all this. This takes the time that it takes. You have to be working for 36 months. There's no way to speed it up. There's no way to double down. You can't work 2 jobs. Like it will take a minimum of 3 years no matter what. So that's category number 1. Category number 2 is education. They want you to learn stuff. Now this is 80 points in 5 years. Where they got 80, could not tell you, but here's how you get 80 points. First and most common way is to attend or teach a workshop or a conference. Most of our paid services and a lot of our non-paid services too are CFRE accredited. So we actually have to submit our material to CFRE in advance, and then they review it and say, yes, this is good. You can count this towards education. So it can't just be, oh, I made a webinar. No, I actually have to take the content of my webinar. Then we do this almost every single month and submit it to the CFRE board. They have someone read through and say, yes, this is appropriate for our education. It can count towards CEs. And then we can get that back. We have to submit that at least a month in advance. If you attend, you get 1 point per hour. If you teach, you get 2 points per hour. And if you teach original material that you came up with, it's 3 points per hour. So you can really rack up if you're the one authoring works, essentially. And speaking of authoring, you can actually get quite a few points for articles, books, and even chapters of a book. You can get up to 30 points by writing multiple books. I think it's maybe 10 points per book or maybe 15 points per book. So if you write a couple books of any link and they get published and again, you got to submit it to CFRE. They say, yes, this is good. You can get a bunch of points that way. Your academic degrees do count. 5 points for an associate's. I think it's 10 points for an undergrad. And then it's an additional maybe 15 or 20 all the way up through a PhD. So you can get a maximum of 40. And that's basically if you go up through your doctorate in something. Again, doesn't have to be in philanthropy, just has to be in something. Question from the chat: does continuing education hours that are fundraising led but not accredited by CFRE account for the initial application? I don't know the answer to that. My gut is no, but also you can kind of plead your case on there. So it would be case by case basis. Usually, from what we understand, we're not allowed to count our CEs unless we submit it to CFRE in advance and they say, yes, this is okay. But it might fall into another category, some kind of a workshop conference. I would say most, not just us, but most firms who do official fundraising education go through the CFRE website. They have like 1,000 education partners. Like we tried to, at one point, say, hey, can we put some of our content on your website? There's more stuff. And they were like, nope, we have literally 1,000 of you who are all trying to do that and you cannot do that. So we're like, okay, good to know. Jenna says yes, but they want more information details. Okay, so that's something that I just learned for today. Thank you for clarifying that, Jenna. Jenna's actually like right in the middle of her process. We'll hear from her in a minute. but it helps and it is most easy because if they want proof, they can just contact us and we just send them the paperwork. It's super easy. We keep it all in a nice file so that all of our clients, we've had several of our clients get their CFRE while working with us, and we're able to help them out by doing that. So again, academic degrees count up to half of that if you have your PhD in anything. Doesn't have to be fundraising. In fact, there's very few institutions that offer fundraising as graduate work, but you can have your PhD in biology and you can get up to 40 points for that. The last category is what they call service learning. It's not very much. So for those 80 points, you only get 1 point per year of volunteer service. So this is you serving on a board of some kind and not getting paid. But if you're in a leadership position, like a chairperson of a board, you get 2 points per year. But that's also per organization. So if you serve with 4 charities and you're the chair of 2 of them, that's pretty good. That's 6 points a year. So it's not a lot, but it helps kind of get you over the edge if you're close. So those are the ways that you can get education. They really just want you to have a good variety and be able to kind of stay up to date with what the latest are happening in the industry. The final category, and again, it's not, I have to have some of this, you have to check all boxes across all 3 of these categories. So practice, education, and they call performance the last category. So 55 points within the last 5 years. The easiest way to do this is just straight up funds raised. So if you're a development professional, you get 1 point for every $25,000 you raise for charity. So if you want to do it just on that alone, you can. It comes out to $1.375 million across 5 years. That's not a crazy amount if you work for a decent sized organization. Say you work on a team of 5 and the whole department raises 1.3. That still counts. As long as you're working full time for that organization raises that money, you can count those funds raised towards your points. There's also some other kind of weird projects in case that you're in a position where you're not raising money. I don't know why they let you count these, but they do. What they call communication projects, where you're taking information from an organization and you're making the world aware about that charity in some way. So it's like a PR campaign. So say your job is like, well, I'm not really the fundraiser. I mostly am just the outreach person. You can get 5 points per project as long as you can submit that project to CFRE and they say, yes, this has what they call measurable impact. That feels very subjective to me. So I don't know how strict they are exactly on that. I did it with funds raised. I think Marty did the same thing. I did not submit any communication projects, but if there's someone in here who's had experience with that, would love to hear from you. Management projects, same thing. You can get like good examples, an Eagle Scout project, like something like that, some kind of a service project where you're volunteering and you're managing a thing. It's not necessarily fundraising, but if you're working directly with a nonprofit, you can get 5 points per project. So you have to do either 11 of those across your 5 years, or you can just raise money, which is what we recommend, which is the easier way, 1 point per 25,000. So those are the 3 categories. I'm now going to turn it over to Jenna, who is in the meat of this right now, and she can talk us through kind of her experience, how to study. Once you've checked all these boxes and gotten all these points, what you do next.
Thank you, Jake. Yes, I am right in the middle of it right now. So I have been working on my CFRE like profile on and off for over a year. I'll be honest, I kind of chickened out. And so I started it, I think last summer. And then I was like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to study that hard. I'm not ready to pay the fee. Like, let me just pump the brakes and think on it. Humorously, I will tell you the education points, which I thought were going to be the easiest for me to get, because not only do I have, undergrad degrees, I have a master's in nonprofit management, and I have a CNP, which is another nonprofit professional certification. I thought that it would count as like education, because I earned it concurrently with my master's. CFRE counts it as continuing ed. And so it had expired in their mind. It hasn't expired. I have the credential, but I lost like 30 hours of what I thought would be countable education because I had done it so long ago. So don't sit on it. If you've got the credentials, if you've got the CEUs, start logging those now. If you are attending Pride activities on a regular basis, log them. Every time you get done with another workshop, if you come to Academy, make sure you get that statement, submit it, go ahead and build your profile while you're earning all of the credentials and time served that it takes to be official. So you're going to create a free account on the CFRE website. As Jake said, their website makes it seem very, very complex. It's pretty simple, honestly. You walk through each of these sections, you log all your information, and then once you think you're good to go, you submit. And when you submit, there's no turning back. You have to pay your fee and you have to submit all of your information. While my application was not audited, that is how I found out that my CNP was no longer eligible for the education hours. And so they sort of kicked it back and said, hey, your application needs more information. And the only thing was in my education section. And so I had to wait until I had attended or presented a few more Pride Academy workshops and some of our virtual workshops, so that I had all my hours that made me eligible. Once you submit, you will receive an email that says like, thanks for submitting, you are approved to schedule your exam. And that is where I'm sitting right now. I'm waiting. I've been doing some studying. I'm working through a study group as well, and talking myself into like actually pulling the trigger and scheduling my exam. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It is well worth just digging in on the website, starting to build your portfolio, your profile, looking back in the last couple of years at your fundraising reports. As Jake mentioned, you can not only submit the dollars you have directly raised. If you are like for Katie, I know you're a fundraising manager, you manage a team, you get to count all dollars raised for your team. And so that was one way that I quickly hit that performance metric on their website. For the communication projects, I know Jake mentioned, I spent a lot of time in my career in annual giving. And so I looked at big projects that we had done specific to annual giving communication. And I submitted at least one of those where we had like revamped our department and revamped some of our communication materials. And so that got me some extra points as well. All of it was, hitting that metric and then getting where we needed to go. Let's see. For those of you who have taken yes, Sterling. I will tell you, friend, I don't think I'm ever going to be ready. So eventually I'm just going to have to like pull the trigger and do the thing, right? Because it's scary. Like you spend a lot of money, you've invested in it, and as you can see, the exam fee is it's not inexpensive. And it's not inexpensive for a retake. But I will tell you, of the people, the big study group that I'm in is hosted by a guy. I'll post his information. He is like a certified trainer. He works with AFP and CFRE, and he hosts a Saturday workshop, which worked for me and my life. And it's like 3 hours, 4 Saturdays out of the month. Many of the people in that workshop have openly said, like, this is my second time. I'm taking this workshop again because I got this close on the exam. Let's skip to the next slide. And we'll talk just a little bit about the exam. So there are 6 sections on the exam, and the domains, as they call them, and they are weighted. So if you'll notice, securing the gift, relationship building, and leadership and management are the most heavily weighted sections on the exam. So the study group that I'm in, for example, they really strongly encourage you to focus on those three domains. You got to study it all. You've got to know what to expect in all the domains. But those 3, securing the gift, leadership and management, and relationship building, are the 3 that are most, like, if you nail those 3, you are most likely going to pass the exam and do just fine. It is very much a relationship focused, donor centric exam. And you have to remember the CFRE is a global certification. And so they're not just looking at what we do in the South. They're not just looking at what kind of fundraising we do in the Northeast. They are looking with a global perspective. And so you really do have to think best practice, donor relationship, what is donor centric answer in any given situation. You cannot just think, well, what would my boss and I do at our specific nonprofit, right? Because while that may be legal and ethical and appropriate, it is not always the most donor centric or CFRE essential answer. So each of these sections is weighted, and each of the sections has a slightly different number of questions related to that domain, which I found really interesting. I've also been told, Marty and Jake can speak to this, it's not like, oh, now you're entering the relationship building section, right? The questions are all sort of scattered in together, they're all mixed in. And as you go through the questions, you have to sort of put on, like, oh, this is a leadership management question. I need to think as a manager. Oh, wait, okay, this is about ethics. Let me put my ethics hat on. A little more free advice I've gained from the study group that I'm in. They suggest that you think about these 4 questions with every single question you review. What is it? What is the concept that we are talking about? When do you use it? Why do you use it? And how do you use it in practice? And those are the kind of guiding stars that I'm told are going to help you pick the right answer on each of the questions. Let's go to the next slide.
Jenna, before you actually go
Yeah.
to that slide, do you mind going back to the previous slide, Jake?
Oh,
Thank you.
please.
I want to point this out because you are so much more, I think, well prepared than I was when I took it. I did like the self-study. I did a bunch of the practice tests. I passed. It was great. It was fine. But when I saw my responses and my results, I think it was the donor research and the ethics, accountability, and professionalism. I just hadn't taken as much time to focus on because I just thought, well, I probably know that stuff, but it was more technical. And so that's my biggest like takeaway on this. Like, yes, some of these things, like, yeah, like I know these things, but at the same time, it was a little more technical than I was prepared for. So I love those questions that you mentioned, but also just don't discount some of the ones that maybe aren't weighted quite as high because you still could like maybe not just make it, even though you focused on the right things. So that's my little tip.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I failed the current and prospective donor research section, like straight up. Like I did not get the right amount, but I had enough score in the other categories that I barely passed anyways, so it's fine. But just don't ask me to do any donor research.
That's awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, it does all matter, especially when you realize that some of those weighted sections, so like securing the gift, it is 22% of the overall score. There are only 39 questions that make up that section. And so truly every question does matter, even if it's not in the kind of MVP domains. As all of us have said, even if you're an experienced fundraiser, you need to study. 1 out of 3 people fail the exam the first time they take it and have to do a retake. So one, don't be disappointed if you don't get all the points you need. I've definitely chatted with lots of professionals that have been in the field for a really long time. They've done this for a really long time, but they're terrible test takers, right? Or it's been a really long time since they've had to take a test like this. It's kind of like the ACT or the SAT. It's one of those things that you have to know the material, but you also have to be prepared for the type of test that you're walking into. And that's part of like the mental preparation, I think. And as someone that has been out of school for a little while and hasn't had to take a standardized test in a long time, that's definitely part of Marty mentioned taking the practice test. It was actually one of the first things I did. So I signed up. You can pay for like a 1 month or a 3-month subscription through the CFRE website and take a practice test. Everybody I've talked to says do it once, maybe twice. Don't memorize the questions. And that is the common risk with taking the practice test like too many times because they change the questions or that question doesn't appear on your test. There's a similar question. What it did for me was highlight the domains where I had the biggest gap or where I definitely needed to spend a little more time in the reading and studying and making sure that I was prepared for the who, what, when, how, and why, right? They also are going to have distractor answers in a lot of the questions. So it's a multiple choice test, but some of the questions they're lengthy. They're all very scenario based. And so you're reading about a situation at a nonprofit or in a fundraising relationship. And like two of the answers kind of sound pretty good. And like both of them sound right. That's a distractor answer. And one of them has like just one little something in there that is maybe not the most ethical choice. And so you really do have to go back to what is it, when, why, and how do you use it? As I've said, I am in a study group. I'm technically in two. One of them just hasn't worked out for me, like life and scheduling. It's a little smaller central time zone group. We came out of this larger group. I'll put in the chat box the guy that I've been following. So he's on LinkedIn. His name is Jack Alato, and his next study group starts on July 13th. It is Saturday afternoons, and it's 4 Saturdays in a row. So I'll post all that in the chat in just a second. Find yourself a study group, because I think for me, like just the resources, you can't even see this, the amount of resources and notes and kind of breakdowns of, all the different reading material that you can find out there. He kind of gave me some guideposts so that I didn't go out and buy like 5 books that realistically I'm not going to have time to read all 5 of them anyway. He gave us some great pointers on the test and how to prepare for it. And that is where I'm going to spend my time over the next month getting ready. So take the practice exams, read the books and resources. Again, like maybe don't read them all, because let's be honest. One book that I bought, and I have it somewhere. Oh, hold on. It's a beefy book. It's really beefy. This guy right here. Oh, no, it's going to blur. Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. Look at this. It is meaty, y'all. That is like a college textbook. Full disclosure, I thought I would be really smart and I would do the audiobook version. It literally put me to sleep. The reader of the audiobook version was just, I just couldn't do it. It was really bad. So I am reading it, but I am using the study group's recommendations for like chapter 4 applies to this domain. And so that way I know where to focus the most of my time and energy. And I'm not falling asleep while I'm driving, listening to the audiobook version. Studying 30 minutes per day. So for me, I carved out those 4 Saturdays. I spent time during those study groups, obviously paying attention, taking some notes, flipping through the books and like keeping up with the tips. And then I usually kind of hid in my office for an extra hour after the study group and either did the practice test or did a little extra reading. I don't know. It depends. I got to look at the test opportunities here in San Antonio, and then I may do one more round of study group and a little bit more studying. The recommendation is 40 to 80 hours of study before you take the exam. I think I'm probably at like 15 or 18 hours of study so far. So on our way. After you submit and receive the approval email to go forward and schedule your exam, you actually have 1 full year before you have to take the test. And so you have a lot of flexibility and wiggle room before you actually have to schedule and sit for the exam. Let's hit the next slide. All right. Once you have passed your exam, as we know you're all going to do because you're amazing fundraisers, you need to maintain your credentials, right? You've done all this work, you've put in all this time. How do you keep up with your credentials? You use that same free profile. So once you've received your CFRE, every single year you have a certain number of hours, and I'll let Marty tell us how many hours you have to get per year. Jake, what is the magic number?
I just
It's a
did
lot.
it.
Yeah, it's like half, isn't it?
I feel like it's half.
It's half over 3 years, so it's like less than half technically. So it's
Okay. Like
basically
20.
just if you just go to all the pride academies and workshops, you're more than.
You're covered. I put it in the chat earlier as well. When you're trying to earn your credentials up front, if you're trying to maintain them and you are scrambling to get enough continuing ed credits, they have approved providers directly on the CFRE website. So you can go there, you can search for live options in your area. You can also do on-demand classes through their website. So I did a couple of those. Some of those are offered by Jackalato, and it's like 1 hour here or there, and you literally just watch the video on your free time. So, you know, you can do that on the side while you're doing all the other amazing things that you do. After you have been a CFRE for 10 years, you can go after the big daddy of credentials and get yourself an ACFRE, which I assume means advanced
It does.
CFRE.
I think it was
You do have
awesome,
to-
but okay.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Awesome
Yeah.
CFRE. I like that better. You do have to keep up with your credentials, because just like being a nurse or any other credentialed professional, once you've done that hard work, you don't want to lose it, right? So maintain it, blast it on all your business cards and your email signatures, and be proud of that hard work that you've done. What other, let's see, and yeah, 1 in 10 applications or renewals. So like when you submit your credentials, 1 in 10 will be audited. As I said, my application was not audited, but it was not accepted immediately because I needed to tweak the details on my education offerings that I submitted. I have heard about being audited, and I honestly, it sounds scarier than it is. The folks at CFRE are very, very agreeable and amenable and communicative. And so, any questions, like I've emailed them and asked about my application, and they're super responsive, and they're very agreeable too. So, same if you have needs for accommodations in the testing center, you need to go through CFRE and work through that process. So if you need a private room for your test, you can ask for that. You just have to have some documentation and go through the process. You're not allowed to take water in the room for the test, but you do get 1 break. So there are all sorts of things to think about. The last big tip I will give, and again, Marty and Jake can speak to this. You have the option to take the exam from your home. Every single person and the study guide guru that I'm following say don't do it. Go to the Pearson VUE Test Center. You are going to have so much coverage and protection in case something goes wrong. Anything that goes wrong at home, you're done. Your test is over, and you have to pay to retake it.
Yeah, no risk of cheating. It's like a white-walled room with no stimuli. They give you big over-ear headphones to block out all sound. It's a singular computer. Like your ability to focus in that environment will be tremendously better. And also there's no risk of them thinking that you're cheating. So I would highly recommend. It's the same cost. Doesn't cost any more or less. I would find a Pearson VUE, like they have them in most major cities. Would recommend doing that. It's just a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on the site, when you're going to register for it, like it pulls up in your area all the options that you have. It's real easy.
Yeah. I've heard horror stories like my cat pulled the power cord while I was taking the test, and like my computer shut down. Well, you're done. You don't get to start over because you were at home, and there's no way for them to proctor that. My husband walked into the room while I was middle test. That's a potential cheating risk. And so like you're done, test over, you don't pass. And you have to pay to retake it. So just go to the exam center, do the thing, and knock it out, because why not? You guys are all awesome fundraisers. You're raising tons of money for your organizations, and you might as well have the credentials behind your name to celebrate and show all that you can do. I'm going to throw this info on the study group in the chat. What questions?